The stars twinkled peacefully as Commander Lisa Winters stood at the large window of Tranquility Station. Her gray-streaked brown hair was pulled back in a neat bun as she gazed down at Earth. The blue planet looked calm from space. It had been calm for 3,000 years. Lisa sipped her coffee and checked her watch. At 53, she had spent 30 years in the Peacekeeping Corps. In all that time, she had never fired a weapon except in training. No one in the Corps had. Not for generations. "Beautiful view," said Captain Mary Johnson, walking up beside her. Mary was younger, only 35, with short blonde hair and bright blue eyes. "Always is," Lisa replied. Hard to believe there was a time when humans fought over it. The last great conflict had ended 3 millennia ago. After that, humanity had united, healing the planet and eventually reaching for the stars. They had met other species, traded with them, learned from them. But they had never again turned weapons on each other or anyone else. "Your brother's shuttle is arriving in Bay 4, Mary said. Lisa nodded. "Thanks." She finished her coffee and headed toward the docking bay. Paul Winters was Lisa's younger brother by 3 years. While she wore the blue uniform of the Peacekeeping Corps, he wore simple gray clothes with no rank or insignia. Very few people knew what Paul actually did. He was a guardian, one of the secret keepers of humanity's past. "Lisa?" Paul smiled as he stepped off the shuttle. They hugged briefly. He looked tired with dark circles under his eyes. "You look terrible," Lisa said. "Nice to see you too," Paul laughed. "Can we talk somewhere private?" They walked to Lisa's small office. The room was plain with just a desk, 2 chairs, and another view of Earth. Paul closed the door and sat down heavily. "Something's happening," he said. Lisa raised an eyebrow. "What kind of something?" "We detected a fleet of ships entering the outer solar system 3 days ago. Not from any known species we trade with," Lisa frowned. "Peaceful explorers?" Paul shook his head. "Their weapons are hot. 27 ships in attack formation." "Attack formation? How would you even know what that looks like?" Paul gave her a look. Lisa knew about his role as a guardian, but they rarely discussed it. The Guardians maintained the knowledge of warfare, strategy, and weapons that humanity had decided to put aside. They studied the old ways and kept watch, just in case. Most people thought of them as historians if they thought of them at all. "Have we contacted them?" Lisa asked. "We've tried. They're not responding to standard greetings. President Doyle has authorized waking the deeper Guardian protocols." Lisa's eyes widened. "After 3,000 years? Are you serious?" Paul nodded. "I need access to the station's deep storage section." The deep storage section of Tranquility Station hadn't been opened in centuries. Lisa had to look up the access codes. As commander, she had them, but had never expected to use them. They took a small transport to a sealed part of the station. Lisa entered her codes and heavy doors slid open with a groan. Lights flickered on automatically, revealing a large space filled with sleek, dust-covered objects. "Ships," Lisa whispered. "Warships. Just the control systems," Paul corrected. "The real fleet is hidden in the lunar bunkers. These are the activation keys." Paul moved to a central console and placed his hand on it. The system scanned him and came to life with a soft hum. Guardian Paul Winters recognized, a pleasant voice announced. "Access granted to Remembrance Protocol." Screens lit up around them, showing data that Lisa could barely understand. Maps of the solar system, the approaching alien fleet, and something else. Massive structures beneath the lunar surface that Lisa had never known existed. "What are we looking at?" she asked. "Humanity's insurance policy," Paul said. "When we chose peace, our ancestors didn't destroy all the weapons. They sealed them away instead. The knowledge of how to fight, how to defend. It was too important. To lose completely." Lisa watched as signals went out from the console, reaching those hidden structures. Deep beneath the moon's surface, ancient systems began to wake up. "The president is calling a planetary address in 1 hour," Paul said. "We should get back." When they returned to the main part of the station, there was a strange atmosphere. Word had spread about the approaching alien ships. But instead of panic, Lisa noticed something odd. People were calm, some were even smiling. "Why is everyone so relaxed?" she asked Mary, who was organizing a staff meeting. Mary shrugged. "We've been at peace for 3,000 years. We've advanced beyond anything our ancestors could imagine. What could these aliens possibly do to us?" "They might want war," Lisa said. Mary looked surprised, then laughed. "War? With us? That's like threatening a hurricane with a water gun." Lisa wasn't sure why everyone seemed so confident. She found a view screen to watch President Doyle's address. Samantha Doyle was in her 60s, with short silver hair and a calm presence that had made her popular for 3 terms. "Citizens of Earth and the colonies," President Doyle began. "As many of you have heard, unknown vessels have entered our solar system. They appear to be armed and have not responded to peaceful communication." The president paused, her expression serious but not worried. "For 3,000 years, humanity has lived in peace. We have forgotten the bitter taste of hatred, the waste of conflict, the sorrow of loss in battle. These approaching visitors may mistake this for weakness. They do not understand that peace was always our choice, not our necessity." On screen, the camera pulled back to show the president standing in a previously unknown facility. Behind her, enormous hangar doors were opening, revealing sleek ships unlike the usual transport and exploration vessels that humans used. The Guardians have maintained the knowledge and tools of our past, not because we wish to use them, but because wisdom demands preparedness. Today we may need to remind the galaxy that humanity's commitment to peace was never due to inability. Across Earth and the colonies, people watched calmly. Some nodded, some smiled, some strangely laughed. Lisa looked at her brother. "Why? Is everyone taking this so lightly? We're facing the first threat in 3 millennia. Paul smiled slightly. "Because they trust in what we built. The Guardians, the hidden fleet, the defensive systems woven throughout the solar system. They're just symbols of something deeper." "Of what?" "Of the fact that humans chose peace when we were at our strongest, not our weakest. We walked away from war because we were too good at it. Our visitors are about to learn that the species that chose to beat swords into plowshares can forge them back just as quickly." On another part of Tranquility Station, Ambassador Joe Garcia prepared to board a shuttle. He would attempt one more, peaceful contact before the visitors learned just how much humanity remembered about the art of war. "Are you worried?" asked his aide, Chris Bell. Joe straightened his simple diplomatic uniform and smiled. "About the aliens? No. About having to break 3,000 years of perfect peace? Yes. That's why I'm going to try talking one more time." The shuttle departed for the edge of the solar system, where humanity's past was about to meet its present. Ambassador Joe Garcia's shuttle moved quietly through space. The stars looked the same as always, peaceful and distant. But ahead, something new waited. The alien ships were visible now, dark shapes against the blackness. They were large, with sharp angles and glowing red lights. Nothing like the smooth, rounded ships that humans built. Joe had been an ambassador for 20 years. He had met with 6 different alien species, all peaceful traders or explorers. This was different. These ships had weapons ready. They had ignored all standard greeting messages. "We're being scanned," said the pilot, Susan Lee. Her hands moved calmly over the controls. "Their weapons are tracking us." Joe nodded. He was 62, with gray hair and kind eyes. He wore the simple white uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. "Keep broadcasting peaceful intentions on all channels." The largest alien ship opened a small bay door. It was an invitation to enter. "Well, at least they're willing to talk," Joe said. "Bring us in gently." The human shuttle entered the alien ship. The docking bay was dimly lit with red lights and much larger than needed for their small vessel. Susan looked nervous as they touched down. "Stay with the shuttle," Joe told her. "Keep the engines ready." Joe stepped out alone. The air was breathable but smelled strange, like metal and something sweet. 5 large aliens waited for him. They stood on 2 legs but were much taller than humans, with thick gray skin that looked almost like armor. Their 4 eyes glowed slightly in the dim light. One stepped forward. "I am Admiral Drek Thar of the Vorax Imperium," it said in perfect English. Their translation technology was impressive. Ambassador Joe Garcia of Earth and the United Colonies. Joe replied with a small bow. We welcome you to our system and hope to establish peaceful relations. Drekthar made a sound that might have been a laugh. Your broadcasts are weak. Your ships are unarmed. Your worlds are open. The Vorax do not establish peaceful relations. We conquer. Joe kept his expression neutral. I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Humanity doesn't wage war anymore, but that doesn't mean we've forgotten how. The alien admiral stepped closer. He was nearly 7 feet tall and looked down at Joe. We have studied your kind for many cycles. You have no military exercises, no weapon testing, no battle fleets. You have grown soft in your long peace. Joe smiled slightly. There's a difference between choosing not to fight and not being able to fight. I strongly suggest opening proper diplomatic channels. The Vorax Imperium has conquered 17 species across 12 systems, Drekthar said. All thought they could resist. All now serve us or are extinct. And how many of those species had been at peace for 3,000 years because they were too dangerous to fight each other? Joe asked. The aliens seemed surprised by the question. They looked at each other. None, Drekthar finally said. Most were primitive. The strongest had only achieved space travel for a few hundred years. Joe nodded. I see. Admiral, I came here offering friendship. I'll leave with a warning instead. You have 3 days to leave our system peacefully. After that, we cannot guarantee your safety. The aliens broke into harsh laughter that echoed through the docking bay. You threaten us? Drekthar said. Your species has forgotten the meaning of war. No, Joe said, his voice suddenly serious. We remember it all too well. That's why we chose to stop, but the choice can be unmade. Joe turned and walked back to his shuttle. The aliens did not try to stop him. Back on the shuttle, Susan quickly guided them away from the alien flagship. How did it go? She asked. About as expected, Joe said. They think we're weak because we're peaceful. Are they going to leave? Joe shook his head. No, they're going to attack. Susan swallowed hard. I've never seen a real battle. No one has. Not for 3,000 years. And with luck, most people still won't, Joe said. Contact Tranquility Station. Tell them one word. Remembrance. Back on Earth, life continued almost normally. People went to work, children played in parks, farmers tended fields. But everyone was watching the news. Everyone knew about the aliens. In Washington, D.C., President Doyle met with her advisors. The room was calm, with no shouting or panic. We are Vorax Imperium, said Alan Clark, the head of Alien Relations. We have very little information on them. They've never approached any of our allied species. Until now, said the president. Ambassador Garcia's report is troubling. They seem intent on conquest, and they think we're easy prey, added Defense Secretary Gina Peters. She was one of the few who knew about the Guardians and their work. That's actually an advantage. President Doyle looked out the window at the peaceful city. For 3,000 years, we've solved our problems without violence. Now we face an enemy that only understands force. The Remembrance Protocol is active, Gina said. The lunar facilities are at full operation for the first time since they were built. How long until the fleet is ready? 24 hours. Less than the 3 days Ambassador Garcia bought us. President Doyle nodded. I want evacuation plans for the outer colonies just in case, but no public panic. Keep the tone calm. The public is already surprisingly calm, Alan noted. I've seen more jokes about the situation than expressions of fear. That's because deep down, humans remember who we are, the president said. We weren't born peaceful, we learned it, the hard way. On Tranquility Station, Lisa Winters watched as the lunar surface seemed to change. Great doors that had been hidden beneath regolith and artificial terrain slowly opened. From deep underground, ships began to emerge. They were sleek and dark, nothing like the bright white transport ships humanity normally used. Paul stood beside her, watching the fleet take shape. 50 ships in the first wave, he said. More coming. I still can't believe this was hidden for so long, Lisa said. It wasn't just hidden, Paul corrected. It was hoped to never be needed. There's a difference. The largest ship was called the Remembrance. As it moved into position above the moon, Lisa could see why. Unlike the other ships, it carried no weapons on its hull. Instead, it was covered with names, billions of names, etched in tiny script. The names of everyone who died in the last great conflict, Paul explained. To remember why we chose peace, to remember what happens when we don't. On the bridge of the alien flagship, Admiral Drekthar prepared for an easy victory. His scans showed minimal defenses around the human worlds. His intelligence suggested a species that had grown weak through peace. The human ambassador has returned. To their station, his second-in-command reported. Their ships continue normal operations. No military activity detected. Drekthar made a dismissive gesture. They hide behind empty threats. Begin the attack in 2 cycles. Target their outer moon colony first. What about their warning? Asked his second. Their warning? Drekthar laughed. What can prey do to hunters? They have forgotten war. We live it. Deep beneath the lunar surface, humans who had trained their entire lives for a moment they hoped would never come prepared to teach the Vorax a painful lesson about the difference between forgetting and choosing not to remember. The Europa colony was small, just 5,000 people in a dome beneath the icy surface of Jupiter's moon. Most were scientists studying the ocean below the ice. None of them were soldiers. There had been no soldiers in human society for 3,000 years. Dr. Kate Hudson looked at the alert on her screen with calm interest. Alien ships approaching. Possible hostile intent. Proceed to shelter areas. Well, that's different, she said to her colleague, Dr. Ben Martinez. Ben nodded as he gathered his research tablets. First contact with a hostile species in 3 millennia. I wonder what they want. Resources, territory, the usual things people fight over, Kate said. She was 45 with curly red hair and freckles. She had spent her entire career studying the simple life forms in Europa's ocean. We should get to the shelter. The shelter was deep below the main dome, carved into the ice and rock. It could hold the entire colony and had enough food and air for months. It had never been used for an emergency before, only for drills. Above Europa, 5 Vorax ships moved into attack position. On the lead ship, Captain Zor watched the human colony with 4 hungry eyes. No defenses detected, he reported to Admiral Drekthar via communication link. The colony appears to be scientific in nature. No military presence. Begin the attack, Drekthar ordered. Show no mercy. Let the humans learn fear again. Zor gave the command, and his ships charged their main weapons. Bright red energy gathered at their forward cannons. Then something strange happened. Space rippled around them. Where there had been empty vacuum moments before, now there were ships. Human ships. Dark and sleek, they had appeared out of nowhere, surrounding the Vorax attack force. Impossible, Zor whispered. His sensors hadn't detected any approach. No engines, no movement, just appearance. A communication came through on all channels. A human male voice, calm and almost friendly. Vorax vessels, this is Commander Greg Allen of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are in restricted space and have shown hostile intent toward our colony. Power down your weapons and engines immediately. Zor snarled. Earth Defense Fleet? Our intelligence shows no such organization exists. He ordered his ships to fire on the human vessels. The red energy beams lashed out across space and passed right through the human ships as if they weren't there. What trickery is this? Zor demanded. On the bridge of the Remembrance, in orbit around Earth's moon, Paul Winters watched the battle through a neural link. He wasn't physically present at Europa, but through the quantum entanglement system he could see and control everything. The holograms are working perfectly, he said to the other Guardians in the command center. They think they're facing real ships. Lisa stood nearby, watching her brother work. The neural interface helmet covered his eyes and connected to his temples. His hands moved through empty air, but in the system, he was controlling the real fleet. ships that were actually still near Earth but could project force across the solar system. While they're distracted by the holograms, deploy the actual defense grid, Paul ordered. Deep beneath Europa's icy surface, systems that had lain dormant since the moon was first colonized activated. Tiny particles, millions of them, rose through the ice and into space surrounding the Vorax ships. Captain, we're detecting small objects, a Vorax officer reported. They appear to be... I'm not sure what they are. Destroy them, Zor ordered, but the particles were too small, too numerous. To target, they swarmed the Vorax ships, attaching to their hulls. Then the real attack began. The particles began to eat through the alien hulls, like microscopic piranhas devouring metal. At the same time, other particles infiltrated the ship's computer systems through external sensors. We're losing hull integrity, the Vorax officer shouted. Systems failing across all ships. On Tranquility Station, President Doyle watched the battle with her advisors. The nanite defense system is working as designed, Defense Secretary Gina Peters reported. No conventional weapons fired. No human lives at risk. And the colony? President Doyle asked. Safe in their shelter. The Vorax never got a shot off. The president nodded. Open a channel to the Vorax Admiral. Admiral Drekthar's face appeared on the screen. He looked angry and confused. What are you doing to my ships? He demanded. Showing restraint, President Doyle replied calmly. Those nanites could completely dismantle your vessels in minutes. Instead, they've been programmed to simply disable them. This is impossible. Our intelligence showed... Your intelligence was incomplete, the president interrupted. Humanity chose peace 3,000 years ago. We did not forget war. We simply put it aside, hoping never to need it again. In the shelter beneath Europa's surface, the colonists watched the battle on their screens. There wasn't much to see, just Vorax ships floating dead in space, surrounded by clouds of microscopic defenders. Is that it? Asked a young researcher. I expected something more dramatic. Kate laughed. War isn't supposed to be entertaining. Quick and decisive is better. I studied ancient military history as a hobby, Ben said. This is actually brilliant. Sun Tzu, an ancient Earth general, wrote that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Looks like we remembered that lesson, Kate replied. On the Vorax flagship, Admiral Drekthar raged at his officers. How could humans hide such technology? Where is their fleet? His second-in-command pointed at the screen showing more human ships appearing near every Vorax vessel in the system. They're everywhere now, he said, but our sensors can't detect actual mass or energy signatures. They might not be real ships. Not real? Drekthar growled. Then what disabled our attack force at Europa? Unknown, Admiral. Tiny machines of some kind. Millions of them. A new human face appeared on their communication screen. It was Paul Winters, still wearing part of his neural interface. Admiral Drekthar, I'm Guardian Commander Winters. Your ships at Europa have been neutralized. Your entire fleet is now surrounded. We are giving you one final chance to leave our system peacefully. Guardian? Drekthar asked. What is a Guardian? Paul smiled slightly. We are the keepers of what humanity chose to set aside, the knowledge and tools of war preserved in case they were ever needed again. You hide behind tricks and tiny machines, Drekthar snarled. Face us in real combat. Why would we do that? Paul asked, genuinely curious. War isn't about fair fights or honor. It's about achieving objectives with minimal loss. Our objective is to protect our people. We're doing that quite effectively. He gestured, and one of the disabled Vorax ships at Europa suddenly broke apart completely, the nanites reducing it to floating particles in seconds. No one had been aboard. The crew had been safely transferred to the other vessels. That could be your entire fleet, Paul said. Instead, we offer peace again. Leave now. For the first time, Admiral Drekthar looked uncertain. The Vorax had conquered through superior strength and fear. But these humans weren't afraid. They were calm, almost amused, and their technology was unlike anything the Vorax had encountered. This isn't over, Drekthar said. The Imperium does not forget. Neither do we, Paul replied. That's the point you seem to be missing. As the Vorax fleet retreated from the solar system, people across Earth and the colonies celebrated. Not with wild parties or parades, but with quiet satisfaction. The peace had been tested, and it had held even when they had to remember the ways of war. Lisa found her brother resting after the neural interface was removed. "You did well," she said. Paul shook his head. "I hoped I'd never have to use any of that training." "Do you think they'll be back?" "Not those ones," Paul said. "But someday someone will. And we'll remember how to defend ourselves then too." Admiral Drekthar paced the bridge of his flagship as it retreated from the human solar system. His 4 eyes glowed with rage. The Vorax Imperium had never retreated before. In 12 systems and 17 conquered species, they had always been victorious. "It was trickery," he growled. "Cowardly human trickery." His second-in-command, Sub-Admiral Krell, kept a safe distance. "The humans use technology we don't understand, Admiral. Their ships appeared from nowhere. Their tiny machines ate through our hulls. I want answers." Drekthar slammed his fist on a console. "Where is our intelligence officer?" Officer Mox entered the bridge nervously. He was smaller than most Vorax, with lighter gray skin. His job was to study enemy species before invasion. "The humans misled us," Mox said. "Their history shows 3,000 years of peace, but they kept their war knowledge secret. They have no military parades, no warships in their harbors, no fighting forces." "Yet they defeated us in moments," Drekthar said. "Yes, Admiral, I believe they developed their technology in secret. The Guardians the human mentioned. They must be a hidden organization." Drekthar narrowed his eyes. "We will not accept defeat. Prepare a message to the Imperial fleet. Request reinforcements. We will return to the human system with enough ships to overwhelm even their trickery." On Earth, in Washington, D.C., President Doyle met with the Guardian Council. They gathered in a room deep beneath the White House that few people knew existed. The 12 council members sat around a circular table, with Paul Winters among them. "The Vorax have retreated beyond Neptune's orbit," reported Betty Crawford, the oldest Guardian at 87. "But our long-range sensors indicate they're sending messages to their home system." "They'll be back," Paul said. "And with more ships." President Doyle looked troubled. "For 3,000 years we've lived without war. Now we've had to remember old ways. What does this mean for our future?" "It means we were right to preserve the knowledge," Betty said. "Peace is wonderful, but only when everyone chooses it." "We need to prepare the public," said Guardian Jeff Morris. "If the Vorax return with a larger fleet, we may not be able to protect every colony without actual fighting." President Doyle nodded slowly. "I'll address the United Worlds tonight." That evening, screens across Earth and all human colonies showed the president's face. She looked calm but serious. "Citizens of the United Worlds," she began. "As you know, yesterday we faced the first hostile alien contact in our 3,000 years of peace. The Vorax Imperium came to our system with conquest in mind. Thanks to the Guardian program and the defensive systems our ancestors created, we were able to defeat them without casualties on either side." She paused, her expression growing more serious. "But our long watch is not over. The Vorax will likely return with greater numbers. We must prepare. For the first time in millennia, we must remember not just how to defend, but how to fight if necessary." Across human settlements, people listened quietly. There was no panic, no fear, just calm understanding. In New Chicago on Mars, Kelly Rogers watched with her family. Her husband Dan and their 2 children Emma and Jack sat beside her. "Will there be a war, Mom?" Emma asked. She was 12 and had only read about wars in history class. Kelly put her arm around her daughter. "I hope not, but if these aliens want to fight, they've picked the wrong species to challenge. I don't understand why they're not scared of us," Jack said. He was 16 and had been studying ancient Earth history. "Humans were really good at war. That's why we stopped. We were too dangerous." "They don't know our history the way we do," Dan explained. "They see 3,000 years of peace and think we've grown weak." "Their mistake," Kelly said with a small smile. On Tranquility Station, Lisa found her brother staring out at the stars. Again. You look tired, she said. Paul nodded. Neural interfaces take a lot out of you. I've been training with them my whole life, but never used one in actual combat before. Combat. Lisa repeated the word. It sounded strange. Is that what we're facing now? After all this time? I hope not, Paul said. But the Vorax don't seem the type to learn lessons easily. Lisa looked at the screen showing Earth. From space, it still looked peaceful. What do you think will happen when they come back? We'll be ready, Paul said simply. The nanite defenses worked well for a small fleet, but for a larger invasion, we might need to use the actual ships. Real fighting, Lisa murmured. I never thought I'd see the day. In the following weeks, life in human space continued mostly as before. People went to work. Children attended school. Researchers made discoveries. But there were subtle changes. The Guardian facilities on the moon were no longer secret. People could see the ships now, patrolling near Earth and the major colonies. The Remembrance remained the flagship, its hull still covered with the names of the dead from humanity's last war. In schools, teachers added new lessons about the Guardians and their role. Children learned that peace was not just the absence of war, but a choice that sometimes had to be defended. At Europa Colony, Kate and Ben continued their research on the ocean life forms. But now they also had new neighbors, a small Guardian outpost established in a separate dome. Does it bother you? Ben asked as they watched Guardian ships practicing maneuvers above the moon. Having them here, preparing for war? Kate shook her head. They're not preparing for war. They're preparing to prevent one. There's a difference. In deep space near the edge of the solar system, automated sensors detected new signals. The Vorax were coming back. Just as expected, they had gathered a larger fleet, 50 ships this time rather than 27. On the Vorax Imperial warship Conqueror, Admiral Drek Thar prepared his forces. This time, he had brought special weapons designed to counter the human nanites. This time, he would not underestimate these peaceful humans who somehow remembered war. The humans think their technology makes them untouchable, he told his commanders. But no species can match the Vorax in true combat. We will crush their colonies one by one until they submit. What Drekthar didn't understand was that humans hadn't just preserved their knowledge of war. They had continued to advance it, even while hoping never to use it. The weapons and defenses waiting for the Vorax weren't just remembered from the ancient past. They were the result of 3,000 years of theoretical development by the Guardians. As the Vorax fleet approached the outer planets, human ships moved into position. Not holograms this time, but real vessels with real crews. Men and women who had trained their entire lives for a moment they had hoped would never come. Paul Winters stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, now physically present rather than connected by neural link. Around him, Guardian crew members worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. All ships report ready, Commander, said his first officer, Linda Reyes. Paul nodded. Let's hope the Admiral is willing to talk this time. I'd rather not show him what these ships can really do. The Remembrance moved forward to meet the oncoming Vorax fleet. Behind it came 49 other ships, each named for a virtue humans had chosen to embrace during their long peace. Compassion, wisdom, patience, understanding, tolerance. The irony wasn't lost on Paul. Ships built for war, named for the values of peace. It seemed fitting somehow as humanity prepared to defend 3 millennia of peace against those who understood only conquest. The two fleets faced each other in the darkness of space near the orbit of Neptune. 50 Vorax warships, their hulls covered with weapons and armor, faced 50 human vessels that looked almost delicate in comparison. The human ships were sleek and smooth, with few visible weapons. On the bridge of the Remembrance, Paul Winters opened a communication channel. Vorax fleet, this is Commander Paul Winters of the United Earth vessel Remembrance. We know why you have returned. Before this goes any further, I offer you one last chance for peaceful resolution. Admiral Drekthar's face appeared on the screen. He looked even angrier than before, his 4 eyes glowing brightly. There will be no peace, human, Your tricks worked once. They will not work again. We have studied your nanite technology and developed countermeasures. Paul nodded calmly. I expected as much. But there's something you should understand about humans and war. We didn't just preserve our knowledge from 3,000 years ago. We continued to develop it, hoping never to use it. More empty threats? Drekthar growled. The Vorax Imperium will not be denied. Prepare to be conquered. The communication ended. Paul looked at his crew, all Guardians who had trained their entire lives for this moment. They won't listen to reason, he said. Deploy the Mercy Protocol. First Officer Linda Reyes nodded and entered commands into her console. Throughout the human fleet, special systems activated. The Vorax fired first. Red energy beams lashed out from their ships aimed at the Remembrance, but something strange happened. The beams curved away before hitting the human ship, as if pushed aside by an invisible force. Their weapons cannot penetrate our gravity shields, Linda reported. All ships report the same. On the Vorax flagship, Admiral Drekthar watched in disbelief as his fleet's weapons proved useless against the human vessels. Impossible. Use the anti-nanite fields. Launch fighters. Smaller Vorax ships poured from the larger vessels, hundreds of them swarming toward the human fleet. At the same time, special fields activated around the Vorax ships designed to destroy any approaching nanites. Paul watched calmly. They're learning, but not fast enough. Activate Phase 2. The human ships didn't move to avoid the incoming fighters. They didn't fire weapons. Instead, they began to glow with a soft blue light. In space between the fleets, reality itself seemed to ripple. The Vorax fighters suddenly slowed, as if moving through thick liquid. Some stopped completely. A few simply disappeared. What is happening? Drekthar demanded. His science officer looked terrified. They're manipulating space-time itself, creating localized distortions. Our fighters are caught in them. That's impossible. No species has mastered such technology. On the Remembrance, Paul watched the Vorax confusion with a hint of sadness. 3,000 years of peace gave us time to develop technologies you can barely comprehend, he said quietly, though only his crew could hear him. We turned our warrior instincts to exploration and discovery instead of conquest. Linda looked up from her console. Commander, the Vorax flagship is attempting to retreat. The rest of their fleet is following. Let them go, Paul said. Deactivate the space-time distortions in their path. We don't want to destroy them. As the Vorax fleet fled, some of the human crew members cheered. Paul didn't join them. There was no joy in his face, only relief that they hadn't needed to use their more destructive capabilities. 3 days later, representatives from all human colonies gathered at the United Worlds Council on Earth. President Doyle stood before them with Paul and the other Guardians nearby. The Vorax have left our system, she announced. Our long-range sensors show they are returning to their home world. We believe they will not trouble us again. A council member from Mars stood up. What happens now? Do we return to our peaceful ways and pretend this never happened? President Doyle looked thoughtful. Peace has always been our choice, not our necessity. That hasn't changed, but perhaps we've been too secretive about our preparations for defending that peace. Betty Crawford, the eldest Guardian, stepped forward. Her voice was strong despite her years. For 3,000 years, the Guardian program has preserved the knowledge of war, while humanity enjoyed peace. We developed technologies that didn't just destroy but contained, neutralized, and prevented conflict. When the Vorax attacked, we didn't have to kill a single one of them to defend ourselves. And that's the point, Paul added. True advancement isn't just building better weapons. It's finding ways to achieve your goals without destruction. In schools across human space, teachers explained to children what had happened. In a classroom on Luna Colony, a teacher named Ron Baker showed his students images of the Vorax retreat. The aliens thought that because we chose peace, we had forgotten war, he explained. They didn't understand that choosing not to do something isn't the same as forgetting how. A young boy raised his hand. Are we going to have more wars now? Ron shook his head. I don't think so. The Vorax will tell others about us. They'll explain what happened when they thought humans would be easy to conquer, and other species will learn from their mistake. 6 months later on Tranquility Station, Lisa and Paul Winters stood at the observation window. The Guardian ships were still visible, patrolling Earth orbit, but they were fewer now. Many had returned to their lunar hangars. I heard the Vorax have sent diplomats to our outer colonies, Lisa said. Apparently they're interested in trade now, not conquest. Paul smiled slightly. Nothing changes minds like discovering you're not the strongest one in the room. Do you think we'll need the Guardians again? Paul looked out at the stars. Someday. Perhaps. The galaxy is vast, with many species we haven't met yet. Some will be peaceful, others won't. But at least now they'll know that humanity's peace was a choice made from strength, not weakness. On the diplomatic ship heading to the first official meeting with the Vorax Imperium, Ambassador Joe Garcia prepared his notes. The Vorax had requested this meeting, surprising many humans. They had asked specifically for Joe, remembering him from their first encounter. As the ship approached Vorax space, Joe thought about how strange life could be. After 3,000 years of peace, aliens had started a war and humans had laughed. Not because they were cruel or arrogant, but because they understood something the Vorax were only now beginning to learn. True strength wasn't in the willingness to fight, but in the ability to maintain peace even when you could easily win any war. Humanity had put aside their weapons 3,000 years ago, not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to choose a better path. Now, as Joe prepared to help the Vorax find that same path, he couldn't help but smile at the irony. Sometimes it took a reminder of your capacity for war to truly appreciate your commitment to peace. In the vastness of space, humanity continued its journey among the stars. The long peace would continue, not because they had forgotten the ways of war, but precisely because they remembered, and because now, so did everyone else.